Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about the Yamaha A4000 sampler. This is a sampler I've had for a while. It was actually a sampler I had a long time ago and I sold back in the early 2000s. And then about 2 years ago I decided I wanted it back because I missed it, so I bought another one. But anyway, I've had this for, I've mentioned, like about 2 years now, and I want to do a couple videos on it. But today's video specifically is going to be about putting a CF card, basically adapter, Ide adapter, in this unit for a hard drive internally. So I've got a spinning disc in here right now. You can probably hear it whining. It's been on my to-do list for a little bit now, just other projects have kind of got in the way. But I was on eBay the other day and I saw something. It kind of, well, first I laughed, then it kind of made me mad, and it basically made me want to do this video. So here's a listing I came across on eBay the other day. But what it is, it's someone having a quote-unquote kit to put a CF card with the CF cards into your A4000 or A5000 for that matter, with shipping about $85. So again, like, this stuff it's laughable, but at the same time I feel bad for anybody that thinks that they need to buy this if they actually want to do it, because they're getting so ripped off that it's just frustrating. So just to explain it simply, to do this, there's three parts you need. First is you need one of these little adapters. What they are is they're an IDE to CF card adapter. I won't get into the protocols of a CF card, but a CF card basically uses the same ATA interface, parallel ATA interface that an IDE drive does. So that's all that is. This is $5. I bought them as cheap as $3 before from AliExpress, eBay, wherever you want to get them. Like, they are just the cheapest thing straight out of Shenzhen. I mean, there's nothing to them. Next thing you need is a compact flash card. You don't need anything bigger than 8 gigs, because 8 gigs is the most that the A4000 or A5000 can see at any given time for a single IDE drive anyway. And even then, we'll break it up into 8 1 gig partitions, because a 1 gig partition is the most they can address. And then you just need a little power adapter cable. So that just wires the bigger Molex connector to the smaller floppy style that these little adapters use. So that's it. All of this is no more than $15. If you have an old, CF card laying around, then you're talking $8, $9 tops. Like, there's nothing to it. So just out of frustration, this advertisement, it motivated me just to finally start getting some of these videos done for the A4000. So this will be a quick video. I'm just going to talk about, basically, like I said, installing one of these into your A4000 for a hard drive, or upgrading your existing spinning disk, with one of these things to make it nice and silent. So here's a look inside the A4000. So the A4000 and A5000 are essentially the exact same sampler. The only there's multiple differences, but the biggest difference is that the A5000's got 128 voices, whereas the A4000 only has 64. And primarily, I mean, they both use the exact same board as well, and you can see even right here that only half the DSP section is populated. So that's your 64 voices. If all this was populated, you would have the 128. Besides that, internally, it's this came out in 1999, so it's pretty modern from a sampler standpoint. You got 72-pin SIMs in here. You can use parity or non-parity, up to 32 megs each, so you can go up to 128 megs total. I've got two 32s in here for 64. I'll see if I have any more RAM to upgrade that to 128. But the important part of this is right here, the hard drive. So typically samplers from this era and earlier always use SCSI, because SCSI was a simpler protocol to implement on the embedded level, and it was more prevalent for external gear, because you still have the external SCSI interface and internal SCSI interface here on the A4000 as well. But the neat thing about the A4000 is that you also have an IDE interface, which the connector for that sits right back here on this main board. So in this unit right now, there's an IDE drive. And that was always nice, because even back in 1999, IDE drives were prevalent, especially under 1 gig. It wasn't, it was pretty common size back then, and they were cheap, so a lot of times you would use them. And you find a lot of these older units, they do have the IDE drives in there, which is nice. And it makes it nice today, because if you want to upgrade to a compact flash or SD card for that matter, type storage instead of the hard drive, for all the obviously numerous benefits, you don't need to get the expensive SCSI to SD adapter, which roughly costs $75 or more, which again are worth it, because they're a good device. There's a lot of development into there. It uses an expensive system on a chip to actually implement all the SCSI protocols. Like, those are $75 for a reason, because they're actually like good device. Like this, for whoever is selling this on eBay for $85, it's like they didn't do anything. Like, if you actually made something and engineered something, spent some time, figuring something out to make it, so be it. You know, you want to make some money, like, I get it, that's great and all, but you know, to charge $85 for these three things that cost you less than $15, I don't know, it's just frustrating. So again, hopefully nobody buys those. Hopefully they see this video, or I'm sure most people are probably already aware that you don't actually need to buy that. But you see this all the time on eBay, and again, it's just frustrating. We see it with LCDs all the time. You know, LCD that costs, you know, $5, somebody will be charging, you know, $45 for it for a specific piece of gear, which is always just dumb. But anyway, back to this. So it's the simplest thing to replace. Let me get the IDE drive out of here, and then I'll go ahead and start installing that CF card adapter. Alright, so that's a little bit better look at it in here. So in the A4000, this cable comes standard with it. This is your standard 4-pin Molex that comes off the power supply over here, and this gives you your +5 and +12 volts for your hard drive. This cable is included within the A4000 when you get it. Right here is your IDE connector, you know, drive connector right there. So you don't need, for at least this style of CF card adapter, you don't need the ribbon cable. There's various styles. There's a lot of styles like this you can get to, which you know, have the male connector on there, so you would have to use a cable and, you know, mount that somewhere if you wanted to use this style. And then even if you wanted to, you can get these actually as an SD version too. These aren't much more. These are like $12 or something like that. But if you don't want to use the CF card or don't have a CF card, you can actually use these with SDs. Now keep in mind that the file system that the A4000 uses, it's not like it's a fat file system or anything that your computer could use. You can't eject this card and put it in your PC and expect to read it. It's just a proprietary file system, you know, this hardware uses to store data. So the data that comes off these isn't portable. It's limited on there. You'd have to transfer data off these in other ways. So actual installation on these is super simple. Stick the card in the actual little adapter, insert the adapter into the A4000 on the IDE port, which is right here. These are keyed, so you generally can't get them wrong, but pin 1 is labeled on the board in case for some reason yours isn't. Just install that like that, and plug in your Molex power. The only other thing you have to do is, through the software on the device itself, you can set up and format that card, which we'll do next. And you have to format it on the A4000. You can't format these externally again because the file system is proprietary. Once you have the A4000 powered back up, you want to go to your disk menu. And if you look in your devices, you'll see there's my SanDisk 8 gig card sitting right there under the IDE master location. So next we just need to format it. So for that, go to your command menu. You go to format. Most of this you can just leave blank except for one thing. Format type, leave logical. You generally don't need to switch that to physical. Partition name, I'm just going to leave blank for now. And then IDE master is the drive I want to actually format. Number of partitions, we want to actually increase that up to 8. As I mentioned before, the A4000 at most can see 1 gig partitions, up to 8 of them. The biggest card you should use is the 8 gig card. Anything more than that, you're just wasting the space, essentially. So once this is done, I'm going to go ahead and hit execute and continue. Format, are you sure? Yes. It goes ahead and formats it. And now it's completed. So once it's formatted, you have to power cycle the unit, turn it off, turn it back on, and then the card will now be available for use, essentially. So under standard program, under disk there, you can see there's my CF card, IDE master. That's the primary disk there. And if you scroll over, you can start seeing the partitions increase for all your logical partitions there. 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 7. So if you actually go back to the disk menu itself, you can see they're all listed right here underneath that IDE master. You've got your 8 actual partitions. So the initial primary partition, then 7 more logical partitions. Back to program, I forgot to mention, you can see how much space is available on each one, so just under 1 gig in terms of, you know, the overhead for the actual formatting the file system does. So that is it. There's really not much else to say about this. I mean, it's super simple, and for under $15 you can have the CF card, you know, in here as a hard drive replacement, or a hard drive for that matter, if you've never had one in here, which is awesome. It's one of the things I really like about 4000s. I mean, there's the 4000s, the Yamaha A4000 is an awesome sampler. It's one of my favorite samplers. I mean, it's more than just a sampler. This thing is an entire synthesis engine. The filters on it are amazing. A lot of people just buy these strictly just for the filters to put sound through them. They're just amazingly powerful. Like a lot of Yamaha gear, it's not the most intuitive piece of gear. You know, you can sit down at like an Akai, you know, sampler for the most part, and they're very user friendly. This one, you know, it takes a little bit of getting used to, but not a big deal. I still love it. I also have an A3000, which is the predecessor to this. Very similar, a little bit less spec'd, smaller display, which a lot of people don't like, but they're both just amazing, amazing devices. So I plan on doing a lot more videos on the A3000 and the A4000, just going over a little bit more hardware, some common problems. The encoders are notoriously going bad on both of these, but they're easy to replace if you need to. So yeah, there should be some more cool videos coming up about these samplers. So hopefully this was beneficial to you. Thank you for watching.